The Cannabis Conversation. A European perspective on the emerging legal cannabis industry.
Welcome to the Cannabis Conversation with Anuj Desai, where we explore the new legal cannabis industry by speaking to the professionals that are helping to shape it. On today's show, we've got Beth Stavola. Beth is Chief Strategy Officer of iAnthus, which is a US MSO. That's a multi-state operator. I'll get Beth to explain exactly what that is. And she's also co-founder of a company called CBD For Life, which is a CBD beauty and wellness brand. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Well, thank you for joining me today. I think we briefly talked about it before we started recording. 2019 was a challenging year for lots of public companies. We'll get on to talk about that. There's lots to talk about. But maybe first we talk a bit, I always like to start with a bit about your background and how you entered the wonderful world of cannabis.
Sure. Okay. Well, it's kind of an interesting story. I spent most of my career on Wall Street in investment banking. So the last 10 years of my career, I worked at Jefferies and Company, which is, it was much smaller then. It's now the fifth largest investment bank in the world, which is,
wow.
Exciting. And it was very, very cool because earlier last year, it was fun to have, to be sitting on the other side of the pitch table. I was pitched by Jefferies, to potentially use them for some business. So it was a pretty cool, kind of turn of events and really fun.
Sure.
So I have 6 kids, and after I had babies 5 and 6, my husband said, no more, 5 a.m. commute to New York City anymore. So I started just doing one-off investments for my family and just managing our money and some other money. And a deal broker that I had never done a deal with before in 2012 said, would you like to look at something to invest $1 million in medical marijuana in Arizona? And I said, yeah, I think I would. I flew out there, I came back, and I told my husband, and his comment exactly was, you've completely lost your shit now. But he totally supported me, and I had an operator that I had to get rid of, for what happened to a lot of investors back then, which was, operators really taking advantage of the financial people. And I stepped in and I started running the business, and I was pretty much petrified in the beginning because I didn't know, what I needed. I had to open my first dispensary on the border of Mexico in a place called Douglas, Arizona, which is famous for being where the underground tunnel from Mexico, El Chapo's underground tunnel, was.
Very interesting.
Yeah, into Douglas. So at that point, there were only 11 medical marijuana patients there. And zoning is really a challenge, like where you can actually put these facilities. So the only place that we could find in Douglas was across from a federal border patrol station where they train the horses. So that was quite challenging. Because it's federally illegal. I'm on the border of Mexico. And then I just started getting really passionate about the business. And I rolled up a few more operations in Arizona. And then the state of Nevada in 2013 passed medical marijuana law by one Republican vote. And I said, Nevada's right next to Arizona. Let me see if I can win there. So I went there, and then Maryland, then Massachusetts. And we talked a little bit before the show about, or at the beginning of the show, about what a multi-state operator, is. Mm-hmm. So we would be considered a multi-state operator along with, I would say Curaleaf, GTI, Harvest. And we're in 11 states. I mean, I would consider somebody a multi-state operator that's, in more than, say 5 states.
Right. Okay.
And, as you mentioned earlier, it's been a tough year since March. In March of this year, so I took MPX Bioceutical Corporation public on the Canadian Stock Exchange in January of 2017. iAnthus went public about the same time. And interestingly, we got the first public to public MSO merger done in the history of the marijuana business.
Right.
It was a tough, probably the toughest deal that I've done. And we closed it in February of 2019. And at that point, it was funny. One of my friends who's a lawyer said, what are you going to do about the HSR filing? And I was like, ooh. She said, at that time, Jeff Sessions was still in office. And, I think everybody knows that Jeff Sessions pretty much hated marijuana.
Yeah. Do you mind just saying what an HSR filing is?
Sure. Hart-Scott-Rodino. So it's the antitrust division. So it's basically preventing. Right. It's preventing any two companies from merging. And so if the deal is over $90 million US, you have to file with the US Department of Justice in their antitrust division. Mm-hmm. So at that time, this was a $1.6 billion Canadian dollars. So, more maybe like $1.25 billion US deal. So we did have to file. And it was iAnthus as 51% and my company, MPX Bioceutical, as 49%. And at that point, it was we were being taken over for 845 million Canadian dollars. I joke a lot now that I say after the way the stocks have traded this year, I don't feel like the $845 million woman. I feel like the $8.45 woman.
I was going to say the valuations would be slightly different, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. That's great. Bit of background then, segueing from quite a corporate career into cannabis as well. And you also have another company called CBD For Life.
I do. And I sold that company. That was a private company that I just really took a shot at making some CBD products in 2015 because everything that was coming into I pride myself on our stores are beautiful. I want to make a store that my mother feels comfortable walking in, mm-hmm. being waited on, and she feels safe, and marble countertops and hardwood floors, and all the products on the hemp derived CBD side of things looked like they were formulated in someone's basement or garage in Colorado, like no testing, no. So I went to a friend of mine who is the CEO of a company called Sweet K. And she's a contract manufacturer for health and beauty products, does a lot of business for, companies like L'Oreal and Kiehl's, big companies. And
wow.
So her factory is FDA regulated. And at the time, she's one of my best friends. So she did it for me. No other factory would have done it at that point back in 2015 because we didn't have the Farm Bill of 2018, until then. Mm-hmm. So we made about 10 products so that we would have a line. And, initially we were just selling to dispensaries and holistic pharmacies and things like that. And now it is so exciting. We're doing over $1 million a month in that brand. And I expect the growth to continue, but we're in stores like Dillard's department stores and Urban Outfitters and Hudson News. So all the Hudson News stands in the airports in the US. So it's pretty exciling.
Wow, that's great.
So I sold that into iAnthus in a $15.7 million transaction all in stock. So it was, super exciting. And that's a division that my sister, Julie Winter, she runs that division. So
cool. Keep it in the family.
Yeah, totally. She's 16 years younger than me. I say she's a much smarter and younger version of myself.
And what's it like working with your sister? Obviously, it's difficult working with what can be difficult working with family members.
Definitely. And my husband is in a family business, so I know very, very closely how that is. But I think because I'm so much older than her, it's almost like she takes direction well from me. So she's really good, and we work really well together because she loves the nitty gritty of the operations, and I like the big picture vision of what we're going to do next.
Yeah. Great. That's fantastic. So, I think, sorry, I slightly skipped over it, but would you mind sort of just letting us know a bit more about what exactly iAnthus does? So I get the MSO aspect, but do you finance and acquire businesses? Is that kind of
We
part
do.
of what you do?
So, yeah. So what we do is, well, first off, for 2020, brands are going to be, our big focus. And I think right now, the Seagrams and the cores of this industry are being built. And we're definitely still in the first inning, because it's very difficult when you have to, we joke like you have to manufacture everything. You have to grow everything in the state that you're selling it. And then you can only sell it in that state. It's a real challenge to get across 50 states when you have to be so fragmented in your business because it's a states' rights issue and federally illegal. So that's made it really challenging for brands to really take hold nationally. So that's going to be one of our main focuses. I think I can speak for the other MSOs as well. I think this year is going to be about operations, showing the numbers, actually showing, good EBITDA numbers, staying lean and mean, and really using our money wisely, because the access to capital has, really dried up for the most part. It will come back, but the fact that US institutions, 99% of US institutions cannot invest in these companies.
Yeah.
They're getting themselves ready to. I see them at all the conferences. Big names that, you would not expect to be looking at these stocks. And I think they're just trying to get themselves ready for when the U.S. federal government makes a change.
Yeah. We'll go on to talk about that actually, but maybe because obviously in the UK, I always liken the sort of state versus federal scenario a bit like Europe, in that you've got lots of different nations and everyone's regulating and legislating in a different way, in a similar way that you guys have the various US states are doing the same thing. What do you think is the best way to deal with that currently, other than just hope that federal legalization will happen?
Well, I hope every day that federal legalization happens, but I hope that we can grow a little bit more before that happens. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We all want it to happen, but we want to be able to, continue to grow into new states, and potentially in markets like this, with companies running out of cash, we can really pick off some good assets. Right now, we just wrote applications for Illinois. And that's a really, really hot market. Illinois went recreationally legal on January 1st of this year.
I saw the queues.
Did you? Yeah. And there, I heard, I haven't looked at any articles today, but I heard that a lot of the dispensaries, ran out of weed, yesterday. So what is that? We were only 7 days into recreational. So this is exciting.
Did I hear like $3 million on the first day or something like that?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. $3 million on the first day, and then like 5.5 or something like that on between the first and the second day. So it's just really exciting numbers. And I am extremely competitive when we are writing these applications. I actually flew to Chicago on, I guess it was like the 29th, and I stayed till the 31st. So on New Year's Eve, that's what I was doing. I was putting in for recreational dispensaries in Chicago.
Right. Wow. And so what are some of the practical difficulties of being an MSO? So, I mean, I always read about the difficulty of transferring or moving goods between different states. On a practical level, if they kind of ironed that out, or is that still a major challenge?
No, it's a major challenge. You can't even technically bring a seed across state lines. That is a real challenge, because from an economies of scale, basis, all other types of industries can literally have one or two factories in the country and be selling to all 50 states. We can do that on the hemp CBD side.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
We have our factory in New Jersey, and we ship, across the country. But in marijuana, you have to have your cultivation, your production laboratory, all of your stores, and they all have to be in each state and stay in that state. So the other challenge, and I always applaud my CFO for being able to report on time or early, is we've got 37 different bank accounts right now because so aggregate all that. It's because the big the big national banks, the Wells Fargos and the Bank of Americas, they will not do business with us. I have a little story. One of my daughters, her communion money account actually got shut down at Wells Fargo because I was the trustee of it. So I'm not really welcome at any of those. I've been in the business too long, I
think. Oh dear. Yeah, that's a really practical challenge.
Yeah, it really is.
And so, I take it iAnthus looks at a kind of all aspect of the cannabis plant. Do you also look at hemp as an industrial material, or purely for CBD and kind of consumer goods?
A lot of people have asked us if we were going to get into the growing of hemp business. And I just think that for us, we have great CBD providers. And when I first started that brand, I think I was paying about $65,000 US a kilo. I'm now paying $4,000.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that I say this a lot. Agriculture, trades at, call it 0.8 times revenue, traditional bricks and mortar retail, 1.2 times revenue, and brands trade at, 6 to 8 times revenue. That's the business that I want to be in.
Yeah. That makes sense. So, I mean, look, we've alluded to it. What are your views on federal legalization? There is obviously a school of thought that the delay in it happening kind of gives everyone else a bit of a fighting chance before the mega huge corporations get involved. But I just wondered what your sort of view is.
I think that with the 2020 election looming, I don't see anything happening in federal legalization this year. Now, something could happen with an executive order if Trump feels like he's behind the eight ball. He could pull a rabbit out of the hat. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on here, as you guys know. But, the Democrats are talking about it. Elizabeth Warren is, super pro. So is Bernie Sanders. And I think I would say Joe Biden less pro federal legalization. So it's kind of like a crapshoot right now. But, I would like to push it off at least a year or two, so that exactly what you said is that, we can get bigger and stronger before the big guys come in. But, you see it in Canada. You saw it with Constellation Brands investing in Canopy. You saw Altria invest in Kronos. So these things are going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. I interviewed a tobacco analyst this morning and talking about all of these sort of things as well. So yeah, it's really interesting. A kind of year or two, I find that argument quite persuasive. And also, regardless, 2020 is going to be a very busy year on the political scene. So yeah, it'll be unlikely something as big as this will get done during that time.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And especially now with what's going on with Iran, Iraq. I mean, I've been keeping very close to that, like I'm sure everybody else is.
Sure. And so I think we alluded to it as well, 2019, very challenging for public companies in the cannabis space. I've done a couple of shows on the Canadian LPs. Do you? It's obviously affected you guys because you're obviously listed in Canada as well. Do you see any kind of differentiation between your experience and the Canadian LPs?
So the Canadian LPs, and I'm friends with everybody out there. Their market is so much smaller than our market. Their entire market is smaller than the market of California alone. And so people have asked me, like, why don't you guys reach up and go and operate in Canada? There are not enough hours in the day for us to operate in the US, which is the biggest market in the world. So we're going to stay laser focused on the US, not just, and then international expansion, like the way I see that, call it 3-5 years from now is we create these award-winning brands. We've already got 2 of them, which is MPX and CBD For Life. CBD For Life won the Best Brand of the Year in the Hollywood Beauty Awards last year. So I wasn't sure how big it was going to be until Britney Spears went up for the best before me, and I was like, whoa. So Cheech Marin gave me the award, which was in LA. So, those brands we've been able to really get across the country, and we'll continue to do that. Our next rollout will be in our Florida operation for MPX, and CBD For Life we have in 50 states. And actually, my sister Julie is going to be going on UK, is it Home Shopping Network, I think.
Okay.
With the CBD For Life product. So I may reach out to you and have you interview her when she's headed your direction.
Do let me know. Not a channel I watch personally, but I'm pretty sure my parents do. So
okay.
I'll get them to look out for it. Yeah, that's really good scene setting. Yeah, obviously the Canadian market is quite small, but I guess that they had a huge influx of capital. So have the Canadian LPs really sort of made any inroads into the US market, or are they sort of?
Yeah, so a good question. And Canopy Growth actually did a deal with Acreage Holdings. And I don't know if you've interviewed Kevin Murphy, but he's a good friend of mine, the CEO of Acreage. And they basically bought an option to purchase Acreage between now and 2026. And they will be able to do that once the States Act passes. So, I think we'll see the Safe Banking Act and the States Act pass well before we see federal legalization. But what the States Act will do will basically say that the U.S. federal government will be totally hands off on the states, leave everybody alone. And I believe we will be able to move exchanges from the Canadian Stock Exchange potentially, or at least have co-listings with either the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. And that's going to make the trading so much better and less. It'll temper the volatility. The volatility is incredible. Up 10%, down 10% in a day. And
but that's probably a consequence of a large retail investor base, I'm sure, rather than institutional investment. Yeah, cool. Well, let's see what happens, I suppose. One thing that I've not really talked about on the show, which your CBD For Life, part of what you do is interesting, is around beauty. Have you found that cannabis ingredients in beauty products has been really clearly the numbers are stacking up correctly in terms of its demand wise, but are they really helping with lots of cosmetic issues that the market needs?
Yes, they absolutely are. So I have something called rosacea where, my skin gets a little bit red. I'm 100% Irish. The anti-inflammatory benefits are incredible. And the antimicrobial benefits and just, kind of the overall wellness. I mean, CBD For Life is a really a wellness brand, and we'll be introducing two other brands under our CBD umbrella. But CBD For Life will have some new products. So we have one brand that's called Cheeky Greens, which will be a really fun kind of an adult line, a kind of a sex line. It'll be really fun. Like picture neon colors and Palm Springs in the 70s and, taglines like, no matter what your gender, orgasm is your right. So we're really excited to roll that out in the second half of this year. And then we've got another brand, which we will have a celebrity endorsement, and I'm still working on that. So I'll just keep that one to myself, but it will be very, very exciting.
Great. And do those products, the name would suggest it's just CBD, but do any of the topical products have THC in them?
They don't, but, we will move into that, and it's probably going to take federal legalization for us to move into that, because right now it's the only, if we were to put THC in something, we actually, so each state, each state regulates it. I would have to actually produce the products
in each state.
And where I had a license for THC in that state, and it's just it wouldn't make any financial sense.
Yeah. I'm really interesting to see whether the addition of THC and topicals adds efficacy. I'm sure it must do. I mean, everyone knows about it in terms of edibles, etc., or smokables, or whatever you call it. But on the topical side, for sort of skin issues, I wonder if THC is useful.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I don't know about skin issues, but I know for sure there are some small companies in each state that we operate in that do topicals with THC, and they're really more geared toward pain.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, versus beauty. But that said, they're not made in an FDA regulated facility where you have to test the batch before, during, and after, and do all of these tests. So I look forward to those times when we can do that. One of the things that has been talked about at a lot of the conferences that I've been speaking at recently are the introduction of drinks. So I know that a lot of the Canadian operators are working on that. I know Molson has made an investment in Canada. I forget which company that they invested with, but and Constellation Brands, obviously, with Canopy, which is a huge player. It's going to be an exciting year. I don't know that the access to capital is going to come back as quickly as all of us want it. At iAnthus, I feel blessed that we are fully funded until we get to cash flow positive in the fourth quarter of this year. And so we're operating lean and mean, and we're watching where every single dollar is spent. And so I think the winners are going to come out, in 2020 and 2021. Yeah.
And I think probably a good way to operate is lean and mean, to make sure you've got the business model right, and then start raking in the profits. So, I mean, I just one kind of a last couple of questions. I interviewed Jada from New Frontier Data a few weeks ago, and we were talking about female leaders in the industry. Certainly in the UK and Europe, it's very male heavy, and I assume it's not too different in North America. How have you found that all? I mean, you came from Wall Street, which is also a very male heavy area. So how have you found that whole thing?
So I'm obviously worked at Jefferies, so I'm, on the trading floor. So I'm very much used to working with all men. But I would say that there are only really two C-suite executives at the MSOs that are female. It's myself and Kim Rivers from Trulieve. And she's a great operator and a friend. And I would like to see more C-suite executives that are female. And I definitely push for that. I mentor a lot of the young women at iAnthus, and things are changing. I expect that Julie Winter will end up being, hopefully she takes my job at some point.
Yeah, great. I mean, it would be great for just to balance it up a bit more and have some more female influence in the industry.
That's for sure. And one of the things that I really focused on was early on, I realized, okay, the stats are that women and men smoke the exact same amount of cannabis. It's basically 50-50. All of the products were geared toward men. Mm-hmm. And as we know with any other industry, the women in the house are the general buyers for the family. And so I really started focusing a lot of products, toward women. And it's been a great success so far.
Yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense. I mean, CBD is pretty big in the UK comparatively for the sort of stage of development we are. And there's certainly quite a few young female entrepreneurs that are bringing out products in that space. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to get your address and send you a CBD For Life care package.
I would absolutely love that. In fact, my wife and my mother would love it too.
Okay.
Yeah.
From me.
Thank you very much. So cool. I'm just going to get to my last question, which is, what did your parents or family say when you told them you're getting a job in cannabis? You mentioned your husband, I think, earlier, but
So I have 6 brothers and sisters, including Julie, who works with us now. Everybody works in finance, in Manhattan. So no one, put it this way, no one would even talk to me from their work phones that were taped. My parents were not happy at all. I come from a strict Irish Catholic family where just say no to drugs was the motto.
Yeah.
And slowly I've gotten them, everybody's certainly come around by now. I recruited my sister back in 2015 or 16. She was doing, working credit derivative swaps at Barclays Bank. So definitely very different. And now I pretty much have all of them wearing cannabis shirts. So,
well, look, if you can convert your family, then most of the way there, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it was exciting last year being, cannabis business executives, number 1 female in cannabis, and it was super exciting. So.
Yeah.
Never did I think at age 50 that's where I would be.
Well, lots more to come, I'm sure. Well, cool. Thank you, Beth. It's been really great chatting to you today. And I think, I haven't really done a huge amount on the US, so it's good to kind of get a bit more of an understanding of what an MSO is and how you guys operate over there.
Yeah. And I would just leave it with saying, I know that there's been, a lot of blood on the streets last year in the cannabis public markets, but, for the opportunities at these levels, our businesses have not changed. The stock prices have changed, but our businesses have not changed. And, I just think it's one of the biggest opportunities that I've ever seen in my investing lifetime.
Wow. That's a good way to end this, I think. Thank you very much, Beth.
My pleasure. It was wonderful.
Take care.
Take care.